Good evening, everybody. This is the Male Perspective Podcast. I am Dominic, and I am 28 years old.
And I am Justin. I am 33 years old.
And we are brothers in life and in business. We own an essential oil company called Organic.com and own multiple homes throughout the Midwest. I myself am a self-published author of a book regarding growth and mental health called The Journey Sunrise. And we are two young men on a mission of self-growth with the passion of helping others along their journey through life. Everything in this podcast will be included, and the podcast will not be edited.
This is our third week recording our podcast, and for this week, our topic is the male perspective on how to leave your 9 to 5. So we're going to just be discussing our top 3 lessons learned on, preparing yourself, whether you want to leave a 9 to 5, whether you've had dreams or ambitions of starting a business, anything pertaining to that. We're going to break down our top 3 lessons we've learned in our lives because we transitioned from working a 9 to 5 to ultimately owning multiple businesses. So we're just going to do a basic breakdown on that. So
real quick, how long did you work a 9 to 5 for the people to know?
Well, I'll do a little summary. I started working at 14 at Kroger. And from there, I worked there a couple of years in high school. I did RCTC, which is a building class where we built a house from the ground up. The first year we did the foundation, and the second year we did, so it was junior, senior year. The second year we did the outside, like the siding and all that stuff, which ultimately led me to having multiple construction jobs. Like I framed and worked for roofing companies, different things of that nature. So ultimately, it's been from 14 to 30. So I stopped working at 30 years old, and then I worked at U of M for 8 years. So
that was your last job.
Yeah,
that was the 8 years at U of M.
Yep.
So for me, obviously, working through your teenage years, but my last, I guess, real adult job was U of M as well.
Yeah.
At a hospital for 6 years, and I just wanted to make that clear because I feel like it's important for people to realize it takes time, and it's okay. I know people that work 20 years before they got out of it. It's kind of a matter of a timing thing. But I just wanted to make that clear. So we have our top 3 lessons. We're just going to kind of bounce back and forth with our lessons. So my first one for us personally would be honing in on one thing and specializing in that skill. A lot of people don't have the confidence in themselves that one thing is going to do it, right? They feel like they got to have their hand in like 8 different pots to make up for that 9 to 5.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing I learned was that when you spread yourself too thin, it's like the old saying, how's it go? When you're, you know a lot of skills, but you're a master of none.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely
jack of all trades, master of none.
Master of none. That's what I was looking for. So that's definitely one thing I learned because our first business was called The Grow Bar. It was a hydroponic store, and we did a lot of different stuff dealing with plants and horticulture, with a little bit of organic stuff sprinkled in there. And I ran the store, and I was always coming out with new products, new things, trying to kind of get the pull into the business. But we sold so much stuff that it was confusing for the consumer. But essentially what I'm trying to get at is that once I honed in on one thing that was a popular item in the store, which was the diffuser jewelry, but I honed in on it and I specialized in it. I researched it. I kind of obsessed over it, for a long time. And then we rebranded, and now we just do diffuser jewelry, and we've been 20 times more successful than we ever were when we sold a bunch of stuff. So if you do photography, just do it. Become a specialist at it. Become an expert at it. If you do videography, just do it. If you want to leave and start an artist business, just do that. Don't feel like you have to do photography and do video and do this and teach this class and do this. Just become a specialist, hone in on one thing, and the customer, the consumer is going to have confidence in that thing. Nobody wants a plumber that is also a electrician, is also going to cut your grass, is also going to paint your walls while he's at it.
Yeah.
We want to call a plumber.
Exactly. And I think, I mean, we learned that from just looking at other businesses. You know, when you look at pizza places, or you said you look at,
exactly.
you know, car repair places, you go to AutoZone, you go to Murray's, you know what you're dealing with.
Exactly.
You're dealing with car parts.
Exactly.
They're not going to be serving, you know, apple pies in the back.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely a matter of just specializing in one skill. And that brings us to the next one on my list, is definitely time management. So, you know, once you find that skill, you find what you want to do, now it's a matter of managing your time or understanding what it's going to take to fulfill that skill. And I'm a big fan of research, and my brother
definitely.
I'm always studying, always looking to be better. But I feel like whatever it is that you're doing, you need to do that research. Like my dad used to always tell me in college, you should spend just as much time studying as you do in class. So if you're in class, you know, 10 hours or however many a week, you need to be doing that and studying, you know, and that can go for anything. That practice should be just as much as the time that you're going to be putting in doing that craft or doing whatever it is that you're doing. You know what I'm saying? And it starts with every day. And I tell people every day you have to manage your time. Every day you have to figure out, what am I doing with these blocks and what is this dedicated to?
Absolutely.
And everything that you do repetition wise is going to play off to the next time. And you know how it is when you're late to something on one day and it just pushes your whole schedule back, and then you're late to that next thing, late to the next thing.
Absolutely.
So time is so important in this, you know, once you start your own business, because even work for somebody, like I noticed everything is broken into blocks of time to make things work. Like when I used to work at U of M, you know, we all took lunches and we took breaks at a certain time. So certain coworkers could leave, so a certain influx of patients could be dealt with.
Absolutely.
You know, everything comes down to time. So
yeah, definitely. Time management is definitely huge. I see a lot of people throw a lot of time at things, but the time is still wasted because it's not a targeted thing. It does kind of play back to my original point of specializing, because if you have one thing you're working on, that time spent is spent on that one thing. It's not, you're not spread too thin. But the time management is definitely important, and something that I think you'll learn as you go through go through business. It brings me to my second point, which is reducing bills and or overhead to maintain high returns. Now, this is a good life lesson, to be honest with you, but it's even more important in business. And so in business, obviously the goal is profit, and if you have high bills, it's going to be harder to turn profit. So what we learned is when we stepped out, we had an actual retail store. And we also during that time got an apartment that was a lot closer to the store, made it convenient. But we realized that between getting the retail store and the apartment, our bills, say, doubled probably.
Yeah. I mean, the overhead just starting off, like you said, at the beginning of the month, is like we already had to make, you know, close to $2,000 every month just to break even. Both,
just to break even. And in retail, you know, you're selling a product and you're not making 100% profit. I mean, it costs to get that product. So, you know, we ended up having to make $3,000-$4,000 a month just to break even. And it was simply because our overhead was so high. And I think, again, it's a life lesson that I always said you can work at McDonald's and save money.
Well, yeah, I think that also goes into, there's a misconception that, I mean, it takes money to make money, but you don't have to spend a lot of money to start something.
Right.
And that's the big thing. Like anybody starting a business, you know, it can be a little bit of startup cost. It could be a couple $100s.
Right.
You know, you can get an LLC for a couple $100s. Right. It could be anything, but just that starting off is going to be that point that leads you up to eventually making money, but it shouldn't. You'll have to spend a lot, and that's where like you said, we messed up. We spent so much in the beginning. Yeah. It was like we have to make this X amount a month just to break even. You know.
And what we were spending in residual, and that is the kind of the key: reducing those bills, those monthly expenses.
Exactly.
You know, I used to have Netflix, I had Sling TV, I had obviously have Wi-Fi, I have Apple Music and Tidal and Spotify, and then our phone bill. Do we really need unlimited data. How much data are we really using?
Exactly.
Because if we're only using 3 gigs a month, then we can cut down, right?
Exactly.
Credit card payments. You can call your credit card companies and kind of negotiate with them. Car insurance, shopping around for that is important. Just reducing that monthly expense is going to save you so much, obviously, in life. But if you're starting a business, it's very important to get that as low as possible. If you can, buy a used car, don't get a lease. You know, just stuff like that. That's going to reduce your bills. And it leads into my third point, which I'll touch on later. I'm going to touch on your second point.
Yeah, my second point I want to touch on is just repetition and consistency. And then I wanted to bring up the topic, like I said, use the term a lot. You hear me say it all the time, is muscle memory. A lot of athletes people probably are familiar with that term, just based on repetition of doing something until it becomes a second nature.
Absolutely.
And you just do it without even thinking about it.
Right.
So when it comes to the business and it comes to starting a business, you want to start these good habits. So anything that you're doing for your business, you want to make sure that you keep repeating. So,
Absolutely.
you know, if you have an event or you have a special going on in your store, whatever, you want to make sure that you keep doing that.
Right.
It's not a one-time thing. And a lot of people fail in business. A lot of people give up in business because they try something a couple of times. They try something,
it doesn't work,
for 6 months and it didn't work.
Right.
But it's like, you have to stand by your product or stand by whatever it is that you're selling.
Consistency is everything.
Yeah.
This is the number one reason why people fail. Like you said, they think if this doesn't bang in 2 weeks, then I'm out. Well, it's not.
Exactly.
Okay. For 99% of it, it's not going to happen that way. So then they quit. Consistency is key. I always use the example of Five and Below. I know that's random. Let me explain. So Five and Below, we all know that store. But when they first hit the scene, I saw it on my way to work. And I saw it on the way to work again and again and again. I didn't know what it was, didn't really care. Kept driving by. It took me 2 years to finally, at some point when I was over there, stop in the store. So if that store would have packed up and left before that 2 years, they wouldn't have had a customer.
Oh, yeah.
So it takes consistency. We have to see it. People have to see it to believe in it. I know one of our good friends that owns a shoe store used to tell me that it's so true. People have to continue to see it, to believe in it. And that takes consistency, like you said. Don't just do something one-off and that's it. You know, be consistent with it. That's the number one reason people fail. You have to stay in the game to succeed in business. The longer you stay in the game, the more you're going to learn. You have to stay in the game. That's my number one thing I tell starting entrepreneurs. Just stay in the game. We hit a point when we talk about that point of us having the store and the apartment where we were, broker than broke. I don't know how more broke you can get.
Well,
we were down to our knuckles.
If you could just pay the bills, you consider that a blessing.
Yeah, if you can survive to the next month, and it's a blessing. But we stayed in the game. We didn't give up. We didn't fold. And now it's been crazy. The blessings have been piled on. But it just was a testament to staying in the game. Stay in the game, because as you stay in the game, you learn. You learn and you adapt. You meet people on that same path, people that you would not meet if you folded.
Yeah, and I think that also brings you into the next point. Why don't you talk about the patience piece that you...
So my third point, it's kind of a two-parter, but sacrifice with purpose and then patience. So what I mean by sacrificing with purpose, I really believe that in business, you have to figure out why you're doing it. Okay? It's very important to define a goal. For me, my goal in business was to buy back time. I wanted time. I had spent so much time at our job, double shifts and overtime and just working. I always worked the weekends. I worked weekends, afternoons for 6 years. You know how many family functions I missed out on, holidays, dinners.
We both work weekends for... I worked weekends for about 7 years. You said you about 6.
Yeah. So I missed out on a lot. So when we started this journey, my goal was to buy back time. And for some people, their goal is to make a lot of money. For some people, their goal is to just not have to clock in. Some people, their goal is just to be their own boss. But whatever it is, it's important for you to define that goal, because then all of your actions are going to follow that goal. So if my goal is to buy back time, I'm going to think of ways to be able to buy back time. So it's not going to necessarily be just to make $5 million. It's more so going to be maybe how can I make $1 million but not have to work for it.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? And so I think it's important for people to have purpose. So with that purpose is going to have to come sacrifice. Now, people make sacrifices, and a lot of people think they have made sacrifices. I mean, and people have made sacrifices, but have you made sacrifices with that purpose?
Exactly.
That is a whole different sacrifice. I had a good friend of mine, Terrence Perrier. He's a motivational speaker. Shout out to Terrence Perrier. But he told me that people can match your struggle, but they can't match your sacrifice. And what that means is we were down on our knuckles. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to being down on their knuckles, but we were down on our knuckles with a purpose. We were down on our knuckles for that purpose, for the purpose of buying back time. There was a reason for the struggle.
Oh yeah.
People struggle. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to struggling, but they can't match your sacrifice. And I think once you define your purpose, your energy and your moves will be in line with that. And with that, you're gonna have to make sacrifices along the way, and those sacrifices are very important. If you're not willing to be on your knuckles, if you're not willing to go all in and be dead broke, this isn't the life for you.
Yeah, and it might not even be necessarily just money.
Right.
It's just when it comes to getting something, you have to know that a sacrifice has to be made. So
absolutely,
it could be your time. It could
absolutely
be friends.
Absolutely.
It could be your living situation.
A relationship.
It could be a relationship.
Absolutely.
You know, there are a number of things that you're going to sacrifice trying to achieve that purpose.
Yeah.
So
even you leaving your 9 to 5, which is the topic,
exactly.
That's obviously a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Leaving that stability.
And there's going to be a period of time where things aren't going to be comfortable.
Absolutely.
But that comfort, or like I always say, tension. That tension is very necessary to push you to the next level and push you to where you want to be.
You gotta stay.
Anybody
in the
that's
game.
successful will tell you they were not comfortable all the way to the top of their success.
Absolutely. And we just see it. We just see the success, especially the new generation, especially with social media. We just see it, and we just think it just came. I use the example of a Diddy. He's been in the game for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
I use the example. You can look at a Donald Trump. Even he's been in the game his whole life because his father was in the game. These people aren't just successful overnight. These people have been in the game for years, and a lot of people I know don't even have 6 months of staying power in business.
Oh yeah.
You gotta be in the game. You're gonna learn. You're gonna adapt. You're gonna meet people. You're gonna get better at what you do. You know, I had somebody tell me that if they could just give their job 10 years, that they'll be all right. That maybe even they can retire. That's cool. But in this life, you want to leave your 9 to 5, you have to be willing to give yourself that 10 years and become an expert at what you do by honing in on it. And I'm telling you, stay in the game. That's my number one rule for any entrepreneur. Stay in the game. Just stay in the game. And even if you can only stay in the game half the game part-time, maybe you do have to go back to work and get a part-time, whatever. Just stay in the game, though. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah,
keep
I mean,
going.
even if you have to, you know, like you said, get a job or take a part-time job, whatever, that leads me to the next point that I wanted to bring up is the goals piece of it. So even if you're still in the game, you still can have goals. You can still be at a job because that's how it was. It wasn't, for us, it was really a transition. So I was at U of M, and I really started saving money, and I really started preparing myself. And like you said, cutting down on my bills, preparing myself for that transition because I knew it was going to be a time period where things weren't going to be as comfortable as they always were.
Right.
But I knew that was necessary for a bigger purpose. So when it comes to your short-term goals, long-term goals, like I tell people, you have to keep reiterating them to yourself. So I write my goals down and then revisit your goals. You know, revisit them every day when you wake up. You know, some people write them down on little sticky notes and put them on your mirror in the morning when you're brushing your teeth. You can look at them. You need to beat these goals in your head so you remember why you're sacrificing. So no matter what you're losing out on, which it could be time, it could be a relationship, it could be anything, that sacrifice is going to be worth it in the end because you're going to come out in a better situation with everything that you're trying to do in your life. You know what I'm saying? And long-term goals, like I tell people, I used to set long-term goals years in advance, but things change so fast.
Yeah.
You know, ever since I became an entrepreneur. So 6 months could be completely different than the last 6 months.
Right.
So now I usually do 6 months at a time, long-term goals, and my short-term goals is something that I just work on from day to day, from week to week. And I think as long as you keep revisiting them, and of course sometimes they're going to change, but you have to have things in place to keep going back to change. So yeah, you might tweak this and tweak that, but the purpose and the goals doesn't change. You know what I'm saying?
Again, it goes back to that purpose. Mm-hmm. And like you said, there's going to be a time, and there's most of the time it's going to require sacrifice to be successful. Sacrifice is where people get exposed. Mm-hmm. You may have consistency. You may have goals. You may hone in on one thing. You may reduce your bills. But when that sacrifice hits, is when life looks at you and says, do you really want this?
Oh, yeah.
Do you really want this?
Because everything is going to point down to that. And that's the thing. If you do everything right, you're missing out on one thing, you doing everything right is going to really highlight the thing that you're not doing wrong.
Absolutely.
You know, the thing you're doing wrong, so you can know and see, okay, I need to fix this or I need to tweak that.
Right.
Especially with the writing down your goals, too. Yep. You'll know, maybe I need to put more energy into this goal because this one I've really figured out and it's going well for me.
You know? And that boils down to staying in the game. As you stay in the game, these things will become clearer. You have to stay in the game. I never knew that I would have a business called Organic.com. We started off, well, my original first business was photography about 4 years ago. And I never knew while working at the hospital and having a photography business on the side that I would end up doing what I'm doing. But I stayed in the game of business. You know, you just stay in the game. It's so important. You just have to stay in the game, and when that sacrifice hits is when people get exposed. People don't want to sacrifice, man. And that's my biggest pet peeve, if you guys can't tell. Our biggest pet peeve with entrepreneurs that say they want to be an entrepreneur. You have to sacrifice, bro. You're going to have to, you may be in situations you don't want to be in financially. You may have to live in a place you don't want to live in. You may have to, like you said, distance yourself from some friends. You may have to miss out some of them nights of partying. You may not get the new J's. You may drive around in a $2,000 car instead of a $10,000 lease. Like, you have to sacrifice. People don't want to do it. And so that's why people aren't successful.
Well, yeah, I think as people just have to adopt that same mentality they have with other things in life, because I call it delayed gratification.
Absolutely.
As opposed to sacrificing. Because you're going to get something out of it,
yes,
but it's going to come later.
Right.
It's just like you saving up for a vacation.
Right.
People will save up 6 months to go to Aruba or save up 6 months to go to Hawaii. Because they know for that week or that 2 weeks they're off work, they're going to be laying on the beach, sipping on a pina colada, living their best life. But they won't sacrifice, you know, this job or sacrifice an opportunity to really better themselves or chase their dreams.
That's so true, man. People will sacrifice so much for other minute things.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. People will sacrifice for anything and everything under the sun except for their dream, except for themselves, essentially. And I just think that's where people get exposed in this entrepreneur life. So the male perspective on how to leave your 9 to 5, a short recap from my perspective, honing in on one thing, reducing your bills, finding a purpose, and being willing to sacrifice for it. And really quickly, patience, understanding that it's going to take time. Justin's top 3.
My top 3 were time management, making sure you know where your time is going every day. And if you don't know where, reiterate and account for every hour, every minute, every second that you're utilizing, you know, every day. And repetition, make sure that the things that you are doing, that you're consistent, you keep doing those things until you get them down and they become, like I said with the muscle memory thing, second nature. And the last thing is goals. Write those goals down. Short-term, long-term, sticky notes. I seen this one girl on Instagram. She had her goals plastered all through her house. Like she had like the bold letters on her ceiling and on her walls. So any room she went into, she's seen it. So you just have to visualize those goals and make them real. And as soon as you visualize them and see them, that's when you can turn those into reality.
Because it's possible. It's possible. We're not taught that. A lot of us don't have the confidence to think that But it's possible if you adapt these 6 lessons that we shared today. So that was the male perspective on how to leave your 9 to 5. Don't forget to like us on Instagram at The Male Perspective, on Facebook at The Male Perspective. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe to us on YouTube at The Male Perspective as well. And we will see you guys next week.
Today I missed my workout, but it worked out. Now I'm missing work now, but it worked out.